I haven't seen a crew this dysfunctional since the Cerritos. What they need is more supervision.
Welcome, friends. We're back talking Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 all the way up to Episode 5 so far. This is the one entitled Observer's Paradox. Now, there will be spoilers ahead, so if those aren't for you, consider yourself warned. Alright, so this episode kind of takes a step back from all the time-changing shenanigans to reset things, deal with our characters' kind of fallout from what they did, and move forward by progressing a little bit of the characterization as well as the main timeline storyline, I guess you could say. So our characters start off with a little kind of mini debrief slash, not really a court-martial, but they're being asked to explain their reasoning behind why they stole the ship, how it happened, what really went wrong, and why things were just thrown so out of whack, and of course the changes in the timeline. It was a nice kind of reflection from our characters to see how they kind of interpret the events, as well as giving us a little bit more nuance as far as the characterizations, especially of the new Vulcan Majel. She's seemingly kind of being pulled between two worlds right now. I'm very intrigued to see where that's going. And I also kind of want to take pause here to just mention the rest of the Voyager A's crew. So we have the command staff, Admiral Janeway, the rest of her head honchos from the Dauntless, as well as the Doctor, the EMH. They're kind of in charge of everything here. Then we've got Nova Squadron and our Prodigy kids. I suppose I'm mostly just curious and wondering what's going on in the rest of the ship. How fully staffed and fully crewed is it? Are we going to spend time with the chief engineer? I have to imagine there's probably an actual chief medical officer on board. I know we have the Doctor, he's the EMH, but it seems like he's more of a mentor role and an advisor to Janeway and an advisor to these kids. He's not necessarily the actual chief medical officer. Again, I'm going off on a wild tangent. I'm just very curious to learn more about the actual rest of the crew of the ship, because we do get a cool new character in this episode in Cetacean Ops. We've got the big old whale named Jillian, a wonderful way to tie in Cetacean Ops, as well as the actual real first mention of whales in Star Trek. Star Trek 4, obviously, the whole character of Jillian was the whale biologist who came to the future. Have to imagine this character is either named after her or possibly could even be one of the children of the whales in that movie who was pregnant when they were brought to the future. George and Gracie, I think, were their names. It would be kind of an interesting tie-in to see if that is the case. Wild tangent, I know, but these are the things I like to overthink because they're the things that kind of add to the fabric of Star Trek as an overall narrative. Really enjoyed the Doctor's Cerritos comment. I don't know why I keep mistaking this show for wanting to call these characters lower deckers, and I guess it's given a little bit more credence here. We also get some really big Murf reveals in this episode. That's something I think was very warranted. Now, I don't want to say this as a negative. He is a well-known species within the history of Star Trek. Well-known's probably not an actual apt way to describe it. A known species going all the way back to the early years of Star Trek TNG, a Melanoid slime worm. But we weren't given any real indication of what they were. So part of me thinks it's a little disingenuous to believe Starfleet has not uncovered any sort of inclination as to how to communicate with them, how sentient they are, anything like that. But part of me also comes to realize we did the same thing with whales. So if you look at the kind of comparison between humans and Cetacean Ops, we didn't ever view whales or dolphins as being on the same kind of level as us. And now we've got universal translators that can actually talk with them. They help control our ships and navigate in the Star Trek universe. So I suppose it could be a similar thing here. Because they were kind of a creepy, slimy worm who didn't have a very well-known vocabulary or syntax that could be readily translated through the UT, I suppose could be some sort of ethnocentrism or xenocentrism or philocentrism. I don't even know if that's a word out there, but some sort of just viewing yourself as a superior life form and never giving a second glance to this creepy little worm thing to even assume it has a level of sentience that's rivaling your own. So of course our characters here who have grown to know Murf, spent time with Murf, developed this kind of kinship with him, of course they're going to be the ones that just assume he has a greater intelligence. They have a way to communicate, even though it's not really in words, it's more just feelings. So I do like the fact that they are the ones that take it upon themselves to try and figure out a way to communicate with them. Now, it's something I mentioned in the last episode, the ease and the quickness of them being able to actually develop the time machine. Similar thing played up a little bit here. They were able to develop the universal translator fairly easily, but I don't think that's necessarily unwarranted either. It failed originally. It was able to translate the speech, but not into any sort of real, digestible, understandable language. It wasn't until later that they kind of put things together using their unique abilities and skill sets to determine that Murf is probably some sort of different kind of intelligence that was not going to resonate within our normal atmosphere. Him being an evolution of a species that was kind of water-based originally, his vocalizations are probably going to be transmitted through the membrane of water much better than air or some sort of gaseous atmosphere. And I thought that was actually fairly clever to tie in the two little things going on, the cetacean ops as well as Murf, in order to show the uniqueness of the universe out there, as well as the cleverness and the willingness to show a different manner of thinking and a different way of viewing things that these younger characters are apt to do. Not just being younger, but actually coming from a whole different paradigm of life out in the Delta Quadrant, being slaves, as well as I really liked this explanation I saw for season 1, that it started out being a Star Wars show and gradually evolved into a Star Trek show. So I guess you could say they're bringing their unique perspectives from something like a Star Wars universe into the more rigidly structured and logical version of a Star Trek universe. The Chakotay backstory, nice to see its inclusion here. It wasn't really done overboard. I've seen a lot of people out there saying you just need to throw away Chakotay's whole backstory with the Native American angle because it was kind of not really done well, and it was introduced to the show by a person who had no real credentials and was lying the whole time. I don't necessarily agree. That is who the character is. Sure, you want to kind of stay away from all the problematic things, but to deny him his entire history, which is kind of paramount to who his character is, I think that would be a detriment to him. So I liked them including that here in a way that actually honored his past and informed his relationship with Janeway, as well as the futures potentially of the story. Obviously, I haven't seen where it goes, so who knows if it's going to tie in more. But I liked them kind of calling back to that as well and showing us these little moments that definitely kind of harkened back to Voyager. Now, I know they couldn't really show flashbacks to Voyager because of the different styles. I guess they could have, but it was nice to see the little flashback moment of Janeway and Chakotay saying goodbye before he took off on the mission and handing her that little rock. The same one we saw in Voyager a couple times that sort of anchored Chakotay to this spiritual realm, for lack of a better way of describing it. Fun to see the Doctor kind of talking about his holo program, and it was also nice to see Jellicoe here. They're definitely amping up the kind of antagonistic, by-the-book stickler version of himself, which he definitely was all the way back in TNG. But I do feel like there's been a reappraisal of him over the years, and people have kind of come down more on his side. I do hope he kind of plays a more pivotal role towards the end of the season, and we can see him be a more heroic version of himself, because I don't think he actually is a bad guy at heart. He just has a different, more rigid way of doing things. Really cool to see Gwyn actually able to input different temporal coordinates on her little inhibitor thing to travel to a destination out there, and I don't even know how to explain it. Was she in some sort of subspace? Was it a different realm? Not entirely certain where she went to get this message, but it was a nice kind of visual statement, and it gave us a little more information that something temporal is coming, some sort of other group of people. I don't know what they're going to turn out to be. Are they going to be people we have met, like a lost version of the Vaunacat who were erased from time, but they kind of skirted around it? Is it an enemy we've not encountered yet? Is it something coming back that we know from a previous Trek? Maybe the Krenim or some other people that have dealt with time that are looking for revenge or something. I don't think it's related to Equinox at all. There wasn't really any time travel there, but I did want to point out the fact that Murf, in his little aquatic form, definitely has some very striking similarities to the aliens, the nucleogenic life forms from Equinox. He also bears a bit of a resemblance from a similar life form from Star Trek Voyager Elite Force. I don't think they're going to be related whatsoever, but I thought they did have a very striking resemblance. Maybe there was a potential reference there that they were trying to show us, the animators at least, but again, probably overthinking things. Overall, I'm really enjoying the course this season is taking so far. I just wish they hadn't dropped all 20 episodes at once, because I feel like this show would be fantastic to discuss on a week-to-week basis, or even in increments, like if they dropped 2 to 3 episodes a week or in 5-episode blocks or something, just a way to keep the speculation and the conversation going instead of what will inevitably happen. It'll probably die out within the next week and a half, and I think that's a shame, especially since we really need to hype this show up if we're going to get that 3rd season. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, all of that. What did you think of this episode, the season, Prodigy, overall? Anything you have, put that down below. Like, share, subscribe, do all those fancy YouTube things. But until next time...
When you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.